Walk into your local grocery store, like during a blizzard or, I don't know, in the middle of a sweltering heat wave, and you're going to see the exact same thing.
Right, the perfect pyramids of bright red apples.
Exactly. The perfect apples, bundles of yellow bananas, plump pomegranates. And we kind of treat this endless summer as this modern miracle of logistics.
Yeah, we really do.
But what if this perpetual ripeness is actually a trap?
Oh, I mean, that's a great way to put it.
Like, what if the modern produce aisle is designed like a casino? No clocks, no windows, the temperature is always perfectly controlled, and it's specifically built to make you forget that time even exists outside.
That casino analogy is incredibly apt, honestly.
Right. And in doing so, what if it's completely blinding us to, well, the most profound psychological survival tool our ancestors actually possessed?
Because the modern grocery store completely flattens our environment. It turns it into this permanent artificial present.
Hmm.
It removes the friction of time. But when you remove that friction,
You lose the signals.
exactly, you remove the signals that tell you where you are in the timeline of your own life. We've basically replaced a dynamic, living world with a static inventory.
Yeah.
And we just don't realize the psychological cost of that exchange.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are doing a deep dive today into a really fascinating piece of writing published in June 2026. It's titled The Meaning Behind the Season, Fall.
It's such a brilliant piece.
It really is. And the core premise is that our absolute detachment from the natural world, the fact that, you and I could just go buy an apple in February without a second thought,
Right.
that has entirely disconnected us from the profound cosmic and psychological meanings embedded in the season of autumn.
Completely.
So the mission here today is to strip away those fluorescent lights at the supermarket and figure out what ancient humans actually knew about this season that we have just completely forgotten.
Yeah. Well, to understand what we've lost, we really have to look at how our ancestors actually lived. I mean, for the vast majority of human history, knowing precisely when something was ripe, that was the absolute baseline for biological survival.
It wasn't just some cute hobby.
No, not at all. If a community misjudged the harvest window by, even a few weeks, they simply did not survive the winter.
Wow. Literally life or death.
Exactly. When your entire existence depends on reading the subtle shifts in the soil or the changing angle of the sun and the exact coloring of a piece of fruit, you don't just passively observe the earth.
You can't afford to.
Right. You develop this intense, almost terrifying reverence for its timing.
Which brings up the actual biological mechanics of the harvest. And I'll be honest, most people today, and I am definitely putting myself in this category, do not know the basics of agriculture.
Most of us don't.
Yeah, but the author points out something critical here that completely shatters our modern year-round illusion. Both apples and pomegranates have a stripped, undeniable, and singular relationship with autumn. They do not ripen in the summer. They do not ripen in the winter. They are fundamentally tethered to the fall.
Because the biological clock of these specific fruits is a terminal point in the natural year. Think about the mechanics of an apple tree.
Okay.
Throughout the spring and the summer, the tree is this massive engine of expansion. It's constantly pulling water and nutrients up from the soil, pushing energy outward into the branches.
Right, making leaves, growing the fruit.
Exactly, swelling the fruit. But in the fall, that entire mechanical process just abruptly stops.
It shuts down.
It completely cuts off the energy supply. The stem of the fruit physically weakens. So the apple is uniquely ripe for harvest at the exact moment the environment signals withdrawal and contraction.
So, because we're completely insulated from that biological reality by our grocery store casinos, are we essentially emotionally stunted?
That's a strong way to put it, but yes.
Like, if we can't see the seasons changing in our most basic sustenance, are we just missing the psychological cues our ancestors naturally absorbed from their environment?
We are missing the foundational metaphor for human life. I mean, when ancient populations watched the leaves turn and the apples ripen, they were witnessing a massive, undeniable shift in their cosmic environment.
They were seeing the whole world change.
Right. They weren't just harvesting calories to survive the snow. They were harvesting meaning.
Harvesting meaning, I like that.
They internalized that rhythm of expansion and contraction. So when we lose the biological reality of the harvest, we lose the psychological vocabulary required to navigate our own periods of contraction.
And understanding exactly how that psychological vocabulary works and like when these specific fruits actually ripen is the key to decoding some of the absolute oldest human stories we have.
Yes, this is where the text gets really deep.
Yeah, the source text takes all of this agricultural reality and draws a direct, brilliant line straight to the story of the fall of Adam and Eve.
It makes a really compelling case. The story of the fall of man is inextricably tied to the biological reality of these two specific autumn fruits. The narrative of humanity's original separation from paradise is basically encoded with the symbols of the autumn harvest.
Now, Western cultures, heavily influenced by the Romans, historically associated the forbidden fruit of this event with an apple.
Right, the classic imagery.
Exactly. But the author points out that ancient Near East cultures, like those in Mesopotamia, they tied the exact same event to a forbidden pomegranate.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of myth-making.
How so?
Well, different ancient cultures use the loudest signal in their local ecosystem to encode the exact same underlying message.
Ah,
The Mesopotamian environment didn't support the same apple cultivation as the Roman world, but the pomegranate served the exact same biological and symbolic function in their autumn.
so it's just a regional translation.
Exactly. And the text explicitly notes that these cultures deeply respected each other's interpretations. They understood that the Roman apple and the Mesopotamian pomegranate were not competing historical facts.
Right.
They were localized translations of the same cosmic reality. They were pointing to the timing. The text makes this incredibly bold argument. The fall actually happens in fall.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Because I really need to push back on this.
Uh-huh.
This goes against literally everything I was ever taught.
Sure, yeah.
You're telling me the fall of man-like, the foundational story of original sin, of humanity being cast out of Eden, isn't about a historical event.
That's what the author is arguing, yeah.
Are you saying this massive theological rupture was basically just ancient people reacting to the weather getting colder? I mean, doesn't that completely trivialize the myth?
It really doesn't trivialize the myth. It actually elevates it.
Elevates it. How?
It elevates it from a distant historical punishment into a living, recurring reality.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, the paradigm shift the author presents is that if you view the fall as a one-time historical rupture, one bad day in a garden thousands of years ago, it becomes a static event you can't interact with. But if the Roman and Mesopotamian cultures deliberately chose the defining fruits of the autumn harvest to represent the fall, they were signaling something much more profound.
Okay.
They were telling us that the fall isn't just behind us. It is a recurring seasonal condition. It's a state of being that happens around us and within us every single year as the air gets colder.
So if these myths were designed as recurring seasonal warnings, rather than, ancient police reports, we have to ask, what exactly is the warning?
That is the big question.
Right. If the fall is happening every November, what is nature doing that terrified or moved our ancestors so deeply that they felt the need to encode it into their most sacred foundational myth?
To answer that, we have to look at the perceptual mechanics of autumn. The source describes autumn as the specific moment when abundance becomes legible.
Legible, meaning you can finally read it. But how do you read an apple?
You read its limits?
Its limits.
Yeah. Throughout the spring and summer, a fruit is pure, unbounded potential. It's expanding, it's swelling, changing shape every single day.
Right, it's constantly growing.
But in the autumn, that process abruptly halts. The fruit declares itself finished, its boundaries are set, its color is final.
Oh,
It becomes legible because you can finally see exactly what it is and exactly what it is not.
that makes total sense.
The fall is a perceptual event. It is the exact point where life becomes readable, not as an endless expansion, but as a defined thing that is about to pass away.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The author calls this realization a perceptual shock.
Yes, perceptual shock.
It's the sudden, jarring understanding that ripeness is fundamentally inseparable from impending separation.
Mhm.
And I was trying to map this onto our lives today, and it feels exactly like the deeply bittersweet feeling of graduating from school
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
or finishing a massive multi-year creative project. You spend all this time growing, learning, grinding. That's your spring and summer.
Right.
And then you hit graduation day or you hit publish on the novel. You are at your absolute peak, your total ripeness.
Mhm.
But the very second you achieve that fullness, a vacuum opens up. You have to leave the campus. You have to separate from your friends. The project is out of your hands. The fullness and the separation arrive at the exact same millisecond.
They arrive together, yes.
So is that melancholy we feel in the fall just our internal recognition that Reaching our absolute peak inherently means the journey is over.
That is the exact psychological mechanism that text is describing, and the graduation analogy is perfect because it highlights the paradox of achievement.
Right, it's definitely a paradox.
When you hold a perfectly ripe, deep red apple, you are holding a paradox. Its physical perfection is the very thing that dictates it must now detach from the tree.
Because if it stays...
If it stays attached past its ripeness, it just rots. It must fall. We are so socially conditioned to think of fullness and loss as bitter enemies.
Oh, absolutely. Success versus failure. Winning versus losing.
Exactly. But the text asks us to fundamentally rewire how we view these concepts. Fullness and loss are not opposites. They are consecutive phases of the exact same process.
You literally cannot have one without the other. The peak is the cliff edge.
Exactly. The psychological weight of the season is so profound because nature is quietly, undeniably performing this brutal lesson all around us.
That everything must eventually withdraw.
Yes. Every single thing that swells and grows and strives toward the sun must eventually be harvested, detach from its source, and pass away.
That is incredibly heavy. I mean, to walk out of your house, look at a tree dropping its fruit, and realize your own mortality and your own inevitable separation is essentially looking right back at you.
It's confronting.
Very. If that is the psychological reality of the season, this recurring, undeniable perceptual shock of loss, how did our ancestors not just fall into a collective, paralyzing depression every single November?
Well, they couldn't just passively absorb that kind of existential weight. It would be entirely crushing.
Obviously, yeah.
So they had to build robust psychological defense mechanisms. The author argues that human societies constructed entire architectural and cultural frameworks specifically to process the trauma of the harvest.
And the text points to ritual calendars as one of the main defense mechanisms.
Yes.
The author highlights Jewish culture, which famously holds the new year in the fall right in the middle of this autumnal window of withdrawal.
Right.
And this new year initiates what are called the 10 days of awe. According to the source, this is a dedicated period of repentance where an accusation falls on the community specifically so they might achieve redemption. It's this highly structured confrontation with completion and accounting. And it perfectly mirrors the fact that the natural world outside the window is also in a state of accounting and harvest.
This raises an important question about the tools we use to organize our lives today. The author argues that these ancient ritual calendars were not just keeping track of time, they were actually functioning as cognitive architecture.
Wait, cognitive architecture. I need you to break that down for me.
Oh.
Because to me, a calendar is just a digital grid on my phone where I plug in Zoom meetings and dentist appointments. It's just scheduling.
Right, yeah.
How exactly does a ritual calendar literally rebuild how a human mind processes loss?
Think about it this way. A modern digital calendar is an endless, forward-scrolling runway. It's designed for infinite addition.
True. Just scroll into the next month forever.
Exactly. But an ancient ritual calendar is circular. It forces you to return to a specific psychological checkpoint.
Okay.
When the natural world goes into a state of accounting, when the physical harvest is tallied and the earth withdraws its energy, the ritual calendar forces the human mind to do the exact same thing internally.
Ah, I see the connection.
By scheduling the 10 days of awe during the autumn harvest, the cognitive architecture forces you to stop expanding. You can't just start a new project. You must sit in the vacuum.
You have to face it.
It forces a psychological confrontation with completion. You are required to take stock of your own moral harvest, your own failures and successes, exactly when the earth is taking stock of its physical harvest. It aligns the internal psychological state with the external physical reality.
So the external environment of falling leaves and harvested fields acts as this giant mirror for the internal requirement to take moral stock.
Exactly.
But let's play that to the modern world, going back to our casino grocery store analogy from the beginning.
Sure.
We live in a society completely obsessed with endless, perpetual growth. We demand that our stock portfolios go up infinitely. We expect our careers to climb a ladder with no top.
Endless expansion.
Right. And we literally demand those endless summer fruits in the dead of winter. So by removing the physical cues of the harvest, have we essentially made ourselves culturally unequipped to handle necessary seasons of withdrawal and accounting?
I mean, it is the defining neurosis of modern life.
Wow. The defining neurosis.
Really, it is. The ancient framework provided a sturdy container for the fall. It gave people a designated time and a clear method to process the anxiety of completion.
But we don't have that container anymore.
No, we don't. Modern culture demands a perpetual spring and summer. We have entirely pathologized the fall.
Pathologized it,
Mm.
meaning we treat it like a disease.
Yes. When growth stops today, whether that's a dip in quarterly profits, a plateau in a personal career, or just a relationship that requires stepping back, we panic.
We freak out.
We instantly categorize that withdrawal as a catastrophic failure, rather than recognizing it as a natural, consecutive, and biologically necessary phase of a healthy cycle.
It's like we convince ourselves the tree is dying just because it's shedding its leaves for the winter.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And the real tragedy of that panic is that by fighting the withdrawal, we cheat ourselves out of the renewal.
Oh, man.
The mechanics of the 10 days of awe are very clear. You use accusation and repentance to achieve redemption. The accounting phase clears the psychological ledger. If you refuse to accept the difficult, painful accounting phase because you just want to pretend it's always summer, you completely skip the redemption that comes after it.
That completely flips the script on how we are supposed to view these ancient myths. The takeaway from this source is just absolutely staggering to me.
It really changes everything.
It does. The fall of man ceases to be this terrifying, punitive historical event where humanity is cursed to suffer forever because of a mistake in a garden.
Right.
Instead, it transforms into this comforting, seasonal intelligibility. It repeats every single year to teach us how to survive. It isn't a curse, it's a curriculum. The natural world is literally giving us a master class in how to process endings.
Comforting seasonal intelligibility that perfectly captures the shift in perspective here.
Yeah.
The myth is not designed to make you feel guilty. It is designed to make you feel oriented. It shows you exactly where you are in the cycle.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? When we synthesize everything and the meaning behind the season, fall, the ultimate takeaway is deeply, deeply practical.
Very practical.
If you feel yourself entering a period of withdrawal or completion in your own life, maybe your career is plateaued, maybe a major life phase or a huge project has just ended, and you feel that vacuum, you are not failing. You haven't done something wrong.
Exactly.
You are simply experiencing your own harvest. You are entering a natural, consecutive phase of growth that strictly requires accounting before you can expand again.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ability to accurately read one's own seasons is the ultimate form of human wisdom.
Beautifully said.
Our ancestors looked at a pomegranate and understood that the absolute peak of fullness is the exact beginning of the withdrawal. To recognize when you are in a season of expansion and to actually possess the humility to recognize when you are in a season of accounting is to live in alignment with reality.
Yeah.
It is the only way to stop fighting this permanent, exhausting battle against the nature of time.
It's about letting go of the illusion of the casino. You know, you cannot be a summer fruit all year round. And honestly, you shouldn't want to be.
Nature never apologizes for the autumn. It never views the falling of leaves as a failure. It simply performs the necessary, quiet work of withdrawal so that the soil has enough energy for future growth.
Which leaves us with a fascinating and maybe a slightly unsettling question to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. If we fully embrace this ancient premise that ripeness and separation are completely inseparable and that you literally cannot have the peak without the fall,
Right.
how would that rewrite the way you approach the end of a relationship, a career peak, or major personal milestone?
Right.
Think about that perfectly lit, impossibly stacked pyramid of red apples the next time you walk through the grocery store. What if the exhausting ambient anxiety of modern life doesn't actually come from the fall itself, but from our desperate, endless attempt to live in a permanent state of summer?